Art House presents The Five Arches of Paris. Grand Arch de la Défense. Located in the business district of Paris, this triumph arch is much more modern than the other arches on the list. It was finished in 1989. The arch was dedicated not to a battle or grand strategic victory, but instead to peace, and to the humanitarian way. The monument is 110 meters high. It is constructed in the shape of a cube. This monument to peace is quite a large structure. Unlike other monumental arches on this list, it is big enough to contain offices, restaurants, as well as a museum and exhibition hall. The arch is often home to open-air exhibitions, and boasts the largest rooftop pavilion in Paris. Porte Saint-Martin. This triumph arch was dedicated to the victories of King Louis XIV, primarily his victories in the Free County, and his victory against the Germans on the Rhine. The arch is located on the site of a gate of the old Paris ramparts, a structure that protected the old city of Paris. There are 4 relief carvings engraved on the arch. It was constructed in 1674. The first relief on the north side depicts the capture of Limburg, Belgium. The relief shows French soldiers storming the city gates. Flying above their heads are angels from heaven. The angels are symbolic of the divinity of King Louis XIV, and that his conquests are ordained by the Almighty. The second relief to the right depicts the defeat of the Germans in the Rhineland. In this carving, King Louis XIV is fighting off an eagle. The eagle represents Germany. He is protecting an old man and a woman to either side. He carries with him a shield adorned with the crest of France, the House of Bourbon. The king is depicted as Mars, the Roman god of war. On the south side of the arch, this relief depicts the king defeating the Triple Alliance. The Triple Alliance was composed of England, Sweden and the United Provinces. It was formed in an effort to help Spain repel more conquests of Spanish territory by the French. While a beautiful relief in its own right, historically speaking, the king did not defeat the Triple Alliance, and in fact had to concede territory to prevent a further conflict with them. King Louis XIV is depicted in this carving as Hercules, the son of the Roman god Jupiter. To its right is a relief depicting the capture of Besançon, a city close to Switzerland in eastern France. The king sits below an olive tree and is given the keys to the city by an adoring woman. Porte Saint-Denis. Much like its sister gate, Porte Saint-Denis was a triumph arch dedicated to the conquests of King Louis XIV. It was also the first built of the 4 triumphant archways. It was constructed in 1672, on the site of an old medieval gateway into the city. The arch was inspired by the Roman triumph arch, the Arch of Titus. The southern side of the arch has 2 obelisks on either side. The obelisk on the left shows the defeat of the Dutch, represented by the crying woman at the base. Above her head are French soldiers, depicted as Roman legions with their battlements rising above them. At the peak are the crests of the king. The obelisk on the right is similar. It has a defeated man at the base representing the defeat of Germany. Above the center arch, on the southern side, depicts the crossing of the Rhine. In many wars against Germany, the crossing of the Rhine has been a historic and decisive act. Louis XIV and his men are classically depicted as Caesar leading his legions from Gaul into Germania. The northern relief shows the conquest of the Dutch city of Maastricht. He triumphantly leads his legions through the gate of the city walls. Above both sides of the French archway is an inscription that reads, "Dedicated to Louis the Great." Now we look to the arch itself. There are 2 lions to either side looking down. Lions are often associated with King Louis XIV. Engraved along the arch are reliefs of flowers surrounding a center carving. In the center is a depiction of a sun with a crown adorned its head. King Louis XIV was often referred to as the Sun King. This iconography is depicted here. Arc de Triomphe du Carrousel. This arch was completed in 1808 to commemorate Napoleon's military and diplomatic victories. It is an example of Corinthian-style architecture, modeled on the Roman-built Arch of Constantine. The arch is located within walking distance to the Louvre Museum. The carved reliefs on the arch depict the following: the Peace of Pressburg, Napoleon entering Munich, Napoleon entering Vienna, the Battle of Austerlitz, the Tilsit Conference, and the surrender of Ulm. Atop the arch were the original horses of St. Mark's Basilica, which Napoleon Bonaparte had obtained from Venice. Before that, by some accounts the horses once adorned the Arch of Trajan, honoring the Roman emperor, as they date to antiquity. After the fall of the French Empire, the horses were sent back to Venice. The quadriga atop the archway are copies of the originals from St. Mark's. The two golden statues on either side of the quadriga represent victory. The figure in the chariot represents peace. They were added after the fall of Napoleon, during the Restoration period. There are 8 Corinthian columns with soldiers of the Grand Army atop them. They were sappers, grenadiers, gunners, riflemen, and dragoons. The Battle of Austerlitz was known as the Battle of the Three Emperors. Napoleon was the Emperor of France. The Holy Roman Empire was led by Emperor Francis II, the successor kingdom of the fallen Roman Empire, and Tsar Alexander I was the leader of the Russians. Tsar is the Russian word for Caesar, or emperor. The Battle of Austerlitz was the greatest tactical and strategic victory that Napoleon achieved. With a smaller contingent of forces at his command, he was able to defeat the combined onslaught from the Italians and the Russian forces. The surrender at Ulm. Emperor Napoleon trapped an entire Austrian army contingent under the command of Lieberich. His Grand Army of France forced its unconditional surrender near Ulm, in the electorate of Bavaria. The Peace of Pressburg. In this relief, an angel on the left fights off a hawk, which represents war. The angel on the right carries an olive branch representing peace. She guides the pen of the figure writing the treaty. The queen on the throne holds a tablet that reads Pressburg. The symbology is clearly indicating that this peace accord was divinely inspired. This relief depicts Napoleon entering Munich, the capital of the Austrian Empire, as a conqueror. This relief depicts Napoleon entering a conquered Vienna. On the left you can see members of the clergy as well as a church in the background. Napoleon is being given the keys to the city. This military loss was the end of the Holy Roman Empire. Now this once great power was nothing more than a territory of the French Empire. Here at the Tilsit Conference, Napoleon gives his terms to Tsar Alexander I, hereby cementing his control of Europe. He also convinced the Tsar and the remnants of Prussia to join with France against his looming adversaries, the English. The Arc de Triomphe. The greatest of the French arches. The Arc de Triomphe was completed in 1836 during the Bourbon Restoration. Inspired by the Arch of Titus in Rome, the Arc de Triomphe was built to honor the grand victories of Napoleon. The Arc de Triomphe was a monument to victories during the Napoleonic era. It also houses the tomb of the unknown soldier, who was entombed in the 1920s. Following the First World War, an eternal flame was lit to honor his sacrifice. The eternal flame is the longest continuous burning flame in Europe. The first sculpture celebrates the uprising of the First French Republic. The second celebrates the surrender of the Austrian Empire. The emperor has a wreath placed on his head by the goddess of victory. The third sculpture commemorates the French defiance against the Sixth Coalition of countries against them. They included Austria, Prussia, Russia, the United Kingdom, Portugal, Sweden, and Spain. The final sculpture commemorates the Treaty of Paris, a peace treaty between France, Great Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia, and finally brought peace to the continent. The first relief was to honor the French General Marceau. It depicts the general's burial. The second relief depicts the defeat of the Ottomans by Napoleon during the Egyptian campaign. The third relief depicts the victory of the Battle of Jemappes in Belgium. This battle was part of the French Revolutionary Wars. The fourth relief depicts the Battle of Arcole, a victory of France over the Austrian army. The fifth relief depicts the defeat of the Ottomans at the Battle of the Pyramids, sealing the success of Napoleon's conquest of Egypt. The sixth and final relief. It depicts Napoleon's grandest military achievement, the victory at Austerlitz, the Battle of the Three Emperors. It was the height of the emperor's reign, and was the reason the monument was commissioned, enshrined in stone to stand the ages. The relief still commemorates his victories to this day. This concludes our journey across the 5 arches of Paris. Hopefully you enjoyed it and learned something new. Do you have a suggestion for our next video? Let us know in the comments below.